Oh, reunited, and it feels so good. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You, Hollywood. And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Yay. Yay. My enthusiasm at the moment, folks, it should not be a reflection on you. I am happy to be entertaining you, edifying you if I'm really lucky, a little bit about the film world. I'm just not terribly thrilled about the subject material for this evening, but I am very happy to be back here podcasting. I am very happy to be back with my regular co-host for this show, the butt to my stuff, Mark Radulich.
Yoo-hoo! Here I am, folks. Meep, meep.
It's been a little bit since we've done one of these, because, movies, right?
Yep, the last one was Artemis Fowl.
Boy, what a decision that was, huh?
Yeah, well, it's funny because, you and I are who we are, and people know that. People listening to this show, like, oh, we know what they're all about. But Alexis Hejna is usually of the, I don't understand what you're all so angry about. It's fine. It's fine. It was perfectly lovely. And even she took a turn throwing it over the pinball machine. Like, we just beat the living shit out of Artemis Fowl. And tonight won't be quite as negative, but let me tell you something,
It'll
folks.
Be close. I shouldn't say close. To Mark's father, you're not going to find a tremendous amount of positivity here. You'll find some, but strap in.
Yeah, Dad, if you're listening, just turn this off. This isn't going to be one where we are leaning on the finer points of film craft. This is going to be a lot of tearing this monkey down.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. For those of you who don't know, tonight it's in the title of the podcast, but I may as well say it publicly. We are reviewing the Netflix exclusive Charlize Theron vehicle, The Old Guard. Mark, did you know Charlize Theron is 44?
I did not, but considering how long she has been It Girl in Hollywood and she's had lead roles, I'm not surprised.
It is not fair that someone that old looks that good.
Here's my first problem with this whole film and Charlize Theron. I love Charlize Theron. I'll go see something that she's in. Just, that was one of the big winning points of this movie, was at least Charlize Theron is in this. They got some name actors for this.
And as a brief preview, her performance is one of the bright spots.
Yeah. Charlize Theron is, generally speaking, always, very good.
But
she was
some of her project choices. I have been led far astray by her
that's the thing,
following her career.
We did Atomic Blonde a few years ago, and if you just want to see Charlize Theron kicking people's asses in Europe for 2 hours, boy, is Atomic Blonde also based on a comic book for you. And here's the thing. Between Mad Max Fury Road, between Atomic Blonde, between all of these, between the Fast and the Furious movies, at this point, you've seen Charlize Theron kick butt. Charlize Theron kicking butt, I feel like, is all she does now. So, if you're here making The Old Guard, not that you shouldn't get Charlize Theron, she's a get, and she can lend gravitas to your film project, especially if you're just a schlubby comic book guy, looking directly at you, Greg Rucka. You get Charlize Theron when she's available and she's excited about the project. However, and she's also a producer on this thing.
They gave her that credit.
There's no novelty to her kicking butt in this movie. We've seen it all before. We saw it better in Atomic Blonde.
Much. For the record, much better. Make me choose between these two movies, it's not even close.
No, it's not a competition.
Sorry, continue your point.
Well, that's it. Like, I was excited to talk about this because I'm excited whenever we get together and do a show now. But I will tell you, like, I watched it over the weekend. I was not excited to watch this movie because I knew what it was about, and I was like, oh, this is now 2 hours once again of Charlize Theron kicking ass. Had it actually been 2 hours of Charlize Theron just randomly beating people up, like bums in a street or something, Wall Street bankers, just walking into rooms and hitting people, maybe set to some, new wave music from the 80s, I probably would have enjoyed it more.
You had me until the soundtrack, which is a big gripe I have about this movie.
Well, fine. You can replace the music with something you enjoy. I don't know. She's kicking...
I could replace that music to something we could both enjoy, and you know it.
You replace it with God, what's the history metal band that we like?
Sabaton?
Sabaton, yeah. She's just kicking ass to Sabaton. I would have enjoyed it more. But that's the problem with this movie.
Have her do it on a boat and send it to Ailstorm. I am very willing to... okay, I now need a movie series that's just Charlize Theron in different settings, kicking ass to
there you go.
various metal subgenres.
When we're done with this, we'll set up a Kickstarter, and that's our project. Charlize Theron kicking ass to music. Here's the problem: this movie tries to be more than that, and we talk. And if you have an opportunity to listen to me and Christian talk about the book that this was based on, I mean, this almost could have been, had I been able to get one person to do both, this could have been a comic strip, because this is literally, I mean, Greg Rucka wrote the screenplay. This was lifted almost scene to scene from the book. But what we talked about, and I won't try to reference the book too much tonight, but this needs to be said. The book treats immortality and the themes therein like a teenager might treat some of these very heady and weighty subjects. It's very angst-filled, and it's very surface level, and the movie does an even worse job of that. The movie's just like, let's not even delve too into this. Like the book got too deep for the movie, and the movie's like, we just want to see people getting shot up in a room? Don't we want to see, ass kicking and all of that stuff? So, and when we get to Filmcraft, I have one major gripe with the casting of this movie, and it's obviously not Charlize Theron. But we'll get there.
Can I guess?
You certainly can.
Well, I have my major gripe, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to be the same. You hate pasty, mop-headed Merrick.
He's what is it? Dudley from the Harry Potter films? He's the bully.
Is he really?
Yeah, that's Harry Potter's adopted brother there.
His cousin, Dudley.
Yeah, Dudley, yep.
You know what? I will say this. Credit to the actor for continuing to get work, so good on you. I wish someone had directed him.
That was the least of my problems. Honestly, my biggest problem is the casting of what's her face here? Kiki Lane. And look, Kiki Lane is probably a great actress. Apparently she was nominated for a bunch of different awards for If Beale Street Could Talk. She doesn't have a lot of credits to her name since 2015. She's been in Native Son, Captive State, she's in Coming to America, which is the sequel to Coming to America.
What a terrible idea that is.
Yeah, it is. Not on the schedule. But apparently, If Beale Street Could Talk is a pretty big deal. In any case, I'm sure with given better material and a decent director, she is better than she is in this movie. She, as the lead, as the point of view character, brings the whole ship down.
I'd agree with that.
So, let's do the plot synopsis, and then we can come back to this.
Yeah, the plot of this movie, such as it is. You know what? I can do this really quickly, actually. If you were to mash up John Wick and Taken, make it really gay, you've got this. And let me be clear. When I say really gay...
Damn it, tea almost came out of my nose.
When I say really gay, I don't mean that I don't mean that as a pejorative. I mean they throw homosexual stuff in there. Yeah, and to be clear, lest I be accused of homophobia, I don't actually care.
I mean, it's fine. It is what it is, and it goes to that part of the D plot of the movie. I know Greg Rucka made a huge deal about it, because
of course you did.
The admission of love, the statement of love from the book is said word for word in the movie, and it's done well. It's one of the finer points of the movie, but it's like you're acknowledging that it was a big part of this movie was they drew a big circle around homosexuality and said, here it is, deal with it, folks. And you as an audience member went, who are you yelling at?
Yeah, that was kind of my... we can get into that in a minute. Okay, so sorry. On a more serious note, if I were to describe the plot of this movie, we follow a group of immortal warriors who have existed for various lengths of time. Charlize Theron's character of Andy, dating way back to like ancient Greece, if not before that. We have a couple of crusaders, one on the side of the Christians, one on the side of the Muslims. We have a guy who fought in the Napoleonic Wars. And they, again, are mercenaries, and their big thing is they take jobs to try and make the world a better place. And for some reason, only now, despite literally thousands of years of history, is Andy starting to question the worth of humanity. You'd think if you were going to have an existential crisis over a multi-millennial lifespan, you could get it out of the way when most of us do as a teenager. They take a job from Chetwili Ejiofor, which is never a good idea. Look, if you see that man in your movie, if he's not the protagonist, you need to run away.
Yeah, he's either going to cast magic on you, or he's, going to betray you in some way.
Or both. So they take a job from him, which is designed around, it's a setup. What the twist? Don't worry, I got more of those coming. It's actually a setup. They are recorded and live streamed to, after being shot to pieces, healing themselves and then violently murdering everyone that just tried to kill them. This is being done by Ejiofor essentially at the behest of, I'm just going to call him Dudley now, of Dudley, who runs a pharmaceutical company because, shocker of shocker, Big Pharma is evil. You can hear if you hear the sound of marbles hitting the floor, that is my eyes falling out of my head as I roll them. The big plan there is to capture these people who have insane regenerative capabilities and who never die, sort of, and unlock their genetic potential to then exploit for the betterment of humanity and personal wealth. Because again, yay. Sorry. I almost said something really stupid there, and I don't want to piss too many people off. So, they now have evidence, but hey, we need actual genetic material to experiment on, so they begin trying to track them down. Right about this same time, another immortal pops up, which hasn't happened for 200 some odd years. It is our character of Niall Freeman. Do you get the reference there, people? Because it's pretty obvious. Subtlety, thy name is not Rucka.
Yeah, I believe that this name won out over black person McColored face.
It was a narrow vote. They tell you that one vote doesn't matter, but I saw the results of that poll. Oh God. She is killed in Afghanistan. She's an American Marine on tour over there. She is killed on a mission, but doesn't actually die because now she is suddenly immortal. There's some consternation about this because if the word angst was not just printed on your ticket, you're not even look. There should have been a warning in front of this movie. I think Netflix needs another warning for when you click on their thing, like, hey, this movie contains drugs, sex, smoking, violence, nudity, blah 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 blah. They need a copious amounts of angst warning because God. So that's met with consternation. Our group of immortal warriors are somehow psychically connected. They dream about each other. They are aware of each other's existences on some level.
Yeah, they solve Professor X's. What's the machine that he uses again called? Do you remember? Cerebro. They solve Professor X's cerebral problem with mutants by just saying they're all they're all psychically cerebro-connected.
So our merry band of adventurers is cued into her existence. Andy goes to retrieve her. Friction ensues because, of course it does, because this movie just really needed another 30 minutes added to its runtime. Eventually Niall comes around to the notion that she's immortal and that life as she knew it is over, and I should go with these people, sort of, but then regret it and make a big stink about it for 40 minutes. They all meet up in France, because France. While they're trying to figure out their next move, their basic plot here is to find Chetwili Ejiofor's character of Copley and kill him, because he knows who they are and they don't really want that. As they're in France, they are ambushed. Two of our characters, the Crusaders, Nikki and Joe, are abducted. Booker is blown up. And they are abducted and taken to our evil pharmaceutical labs, where Dudley menaces them, sort of. We get a little bit of backstory. So there is a scene in the France bit that is kind of important. So we do get some backstory there. That's when we learn about how old all of the people are, some of the things they've done and gone through over their long lives. The big one, and I say big one because, God, I'll save this for Filmcraft. Among my myriad complaints with this movie is stuff pertaining to this plot thread. Very bare thread, but it exists. One of the immortals, we're introduced to this because Niall dreams about her, was caught in England during the some period in time when witch trials were very common, so sometime during the Middle Ages. I mean, realistically, they wouldn't have let her in the country. Xenophobia was a big thing in the Middle Ages. You drag some poor. I don't think they ever gave her a specific. The way her name is spelled leads me to go Chinese, so I'm going to assume that and just apologize if I'm wrong.
It's like Kuhn.
Yeah, I've seen how it's spelled. And I think the actor, I think, is actually Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be Vietnamese instead of Chinese, because we're really, really sensitive about that stuff now. You can't actually pretend to be something else.
Yep.
Unless you're doing it in real life. Now that I've pissed everybody off. So I'm going to assume Chinese, and I'm just going to apologize if I'm wrong later. They never say, so my assumption. She and Andy were captured at one point, and they tried to execute them as witches. When they wouldn't die, they all went, "A witch!" And apparently the only... to counteract the fact that witches float because they weigh as much as a duck, they strap this poor Chinese woman into a large iron maiden-style coffin and dump her over a boat into the ocean somewhere. And if you want to imagine something similar to hell, being locked in an iron box at the bottom of the ocean, constantly dying, regenerating, only to drown again moments later, is as close to an approximation as you're going to find physically, I think.
Yeah, I think the only thing, I don't think anything is worse than that, quite frankly. But I think, on film at least, the only thing that's ever been captured that approximates death by constant drowning in a box is when the bride is buried alive. And she gets out of it fast enough, but the existential terror of being in a coffin buried beneath the ground and not having enough room to move your arms and legs in order to fight your way out of it, and which she does if you've seen Kill Bill, but still, yikes.
Yeah, one of the few things that can actually, that's one of the reasons the Immortals all kind of say, yeah, that's why we're kind of afraid of being caught more than anything. Because it's not unreasonable to put us in a situation that we can't fight our way out of. And then we're kind of stuck there forever until our immortality, quote-unquote, runs out, because this being another kind of plot point, they do die eventually. They don't know what, much like they don't know why they are chosen to be immortal. They don't know why or when their immortality will run out, but they will stop healing. And it's not necessarily a time thing, because it's happened to some people who were younger than Andy. So nobody knows when or why, but it does happen. Can happen. And there are, as they kind of point out here, some fates potentially worse than death. So they really don't want to be caught, and now they are, and they're being experimented on, and they're dying and coming back as they're extracting different genetic material, different organs to do different tests on. All of which is just so... Okay, this is a wild inconsistency within the story, and that's why I'm going to bitch about it right now. If they just regenerate anything they lose, which is what they do, I really don't understand why the people in charge wouldn't, and maybe they heal too fast, in which case, okay, fair enough, I'll buy that. But you could cut one of them open and just remove the entire organ, right? Without too much difficulty in this case. It just seems like it wasn't in the budget, so okay, we'll just take endless biopsies. One of the other motivating factors for Merrick is he wants to have all of them, because if one of my competitors gets a hold of this, my monopolistic power dwindles, and I can't have that, which is an unbelievably thin motivation. I'll just throw it out there. Anyway, so two of them are captured. Booker, Andy, and Niall begin operations to go retrieve them. Niall abandons this because she wants to be with her family for at least a few more years before the awkwardness of her being an immortal and not getting any older and whatnot becomes a thing. Booker has already expressed his personal dissatisfaction with immortality and seeing all of his family members grow old and die, and him being close to them when they did, and just how all of that played out. His last son in particular, who died a very horrible death of cancer long before there were appropriate treatments, and just at the end resented his father for continuing to live and not suffer physical ailments and whatnot. So she leaves to go spend a few more years with her family before having to cut ties. As she's about to leave, she realizes that the gun she was handed wasn't actually loaded, and it was handed to her by Andy after Andy got it from Booker, and swerve, bro, Booker was in on it all along. He and Andy are captured after they confront Ejiofor. But right around this time, it's also revealed to the characters, we, the audience, know it a little bit earlier, that Andy's immortality has stopped working. It has been passed on to Niall, apparently. There can be only, not one in this case, but there can only be 4 or 5. There can be only 5. Not as catchy as there can be only 1. So her immortality is waning, and rather than take this as, okay, she's not actually all that useful, they decide, no, we need to figure out what changed between her coming back in our footage of her, in our very expensive snuff film, as I believe it is called, and now. So she and Booker get abducted. At this point, Ejiofor takes moral issue with what's going on, as though he shouldn't have before. Just the dumbest bit of writing.
Yeah.
And then in another bit of dumb writing, as Andy and Booker are drugged and taken away, as Ejiofor objects, he is knocked out. But because our villains in this case are as cliched as you can get, they totally leave alive the one guy who now objects to their mission, knows all their secrets, and has access to their facility. I'm sure that won't come back to bite them in about 20 minutes. Niall shows up. Ejiofor reveals that his motives are pure. He just wanted an end to disease, and I never really got over the death of my wife, who died of ALS. and you people could have been the key, and please, because of my terrible, terrible emotional story, don't actually hold me accountable for my actions. And they all go along with this.
Yeah, let me jump in here for 1 second. I mentioned this on the podcast last night. Had he just done the common sense thing and, like, gave himself up? Like, why did he have to drag everybody else down? Like, look, you know, I don't want to be immortal anymore. I think there's good to be had with finding the fountain of youth somewhere in my genetic code. So here, so I submit myself. I'm leaving the group. I'm going to give myself to Merrick, and I'm going to let them operate on me, and hopefully this results in me not being an immortal anymore. All right, well, you do you, pal. Why does he need to sabotage everybody else?
They sort of answer that in this, because the answer to that is Merrick insists on having all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I imagine that's how it started, right? Like, because Booker is selling them out for the majority of this story. So at some point, he and, like, Copley got together and he said, you know, I'm kind of sick of being immortal. And Copley said, buddy, I have a guy.
Right. I suppose.
But unfortunately, my guy is like, yeah, I need the whole set. I'm an OCD collector.
That's the problem. There's so many holes in the motivation for what's being done here that it's distracting from the overall plot of the movie.
I completely agree there. Anyway, Niall stages a final assault on the laboratories of Merrick. It all goes well. The good guys win. The bad guys die. There's even a diving out of a window scene just because we needed a falling shot, I guess. At the end of it, Booker is sentenced to be exiled from the group for 100 years because they can't trust him anymore. Andy decides to stay with the group and help facilitate despite no longer being immortal because she is, by a country mile, the best actual fighter they have. They all meet with Ejiofor and see his work tracking he's done work tracking the history of this group and points out to them all the ripple effects of all the good that they've done. You saved this person here, and then their daughter discovered an early detection for diabetes, and this person who you saved here went on to help smuggle people out of the Holocaust, except no, we all hate the Jews, so it's not actually that. It was saving people from the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, because that's a reference people get. So they decide to rededicate themselves to doing good in the world, knowing that there will be good consequences to it. And then our sequel bait, in addition to the other bits of sequel bait along the way, we see Booker drunkenly stumble back to his apartment, only to see our no longer waterlogged, but our Chinese friend Queen back above ground. She's dry, and saying to Booker, "Oh, it's so nice to finally meet you. ... To be continued. Please, 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 please give us a franchise. I vomit the end."
All right.
This movie.
Take a breath, or whatever it is you do to relax. Let me explain something about this movie.
By all means.
Now look, when you have...
It's a great way to start a sentence.
When you have a situation with out-of-this-world fantastical characters, you need to have your point-of-view character. Most famously, this is, if you look at, like, Joe Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, you have your Luke Skywalker. He's your easily identifiable point-of-view character in this crazy mixed-up world that is Star Wars. So here, your point-of-view character is Niall Freeman, right? She is the reason for them to give, the explanation of what it is to be immortal and the sort of existential crisis that they're going through as a group and individually. She's there to receive that information. If she's not working, if that point-of-view character isn't easily identifiable for the audience, charismatic, fun to watch, and because this is a visual medium and this is a film in 2020, pretty to look at, you are going to have, and that's pretty. That's not a misogynist thing. That's pretty if you're a boy, pretty if you're a girl, pretty if you're a goat, pretty if you identify as a zebra, whatever. You must be pretty. Your audience is not going to go with you. They're not going to go with you for the ride. They're not going to be comfortable in this crazy world you've created, and so casting is very important. Once you've casted your pretty actress or actor, now you've got to get them working as a character. This is where performance and direction come into play. I've never quite seen a situation where they missed every single ball thrown at them. She's not an ugly woman. Let me first say that. In defense of this woman, she at least meets... Now, she may not be like to your individual taste as a person, but she is not fucking the Elephant Man, okay? She's not, like, horribly unattractive or awkward or anything else. She looks like a lovely young black gal. So, okay. However, her character is written, and the performance of said character is so off-putting and so unlikable, it dragged the entire film down the toilet. Like, Charlize Theron couldn't save this thing. And there was potential here for a better movie had they wrote this character a little bit better. But they bulked up her stuff from the book. Because in the book, she's almost a nothing character. She's literally there as a sponge to just soak up exposition. And they don't really give her a whole lot to do past her introduction. Here, they invented whole fight scenes for her. And they gave her a hero moment at the end. But the first act of this film, where you're introduced to her, she finds out she's immortal. Andy has become aware of her, and the Andy is going to go get her before they lose track of her, and she causes them, unknown to herself, a whole host of trouble. So that's like the whole first act of the Old Guard, and the entire time this is happening, she is just the worst person. She's fucking terrible. Why is she fucking terrible? They wrote her in such a way to where Andy is giving her a fairly reasonable explanation for what's going on, and while it sounds fantastical, they wrote her in such a way to where she's like recoiling from the horrible truth of the matter, as if she was revealed to have had cancer or something. Now, in defense of some of that reaction, they also write Andy as being a little too coy, a little too holding the cards close to vest. So I remember my feeling watching this going, I somewhat empathize with Niall because Andy's not really telling her anything. Like, she first gives her a reasonable explanation, and that's a little hard to hear, which is weird because what she heard was, you're never going to die. You're immortal, and if I shoot you, you'll come back to life. Okay, bit of a struggle there, but I think most reasonable people would be like, well, let's talk about this. Her reaction is so harsh and so out of left field that everything that flows from that scene just makes her worse as it goes on, and she never really recovers from this. As the movie progresses and she gets intermingled in the greater story of Booker selling out the team because he no longer wants to be an immortal, she's just kind of along for the ride. But I already hate this woman so much that I don't care, and I wish she'd die. And then they give her the big hero.
Some bad news for you there.
Yeah, and then they give her the big hero moment at the end, which is utterly unearned. It was like, well, we have to give her something to do. She's the big star here. She is the star besides Charlize Theron, right? We're trying to make someone here. Like, this is wrestling parlance. We're trying to put somebody over. We're trying to make a new star. So they give her the big hero moment where she dives with Merrick out of a window, which in the book, they do the diving out the window thing, but they do that to escape. She doesn't murder a guy in cold blood for no other reason than it looked cool on film. There was no reason for her to grab Merrick and jump out the window.
I think you're misremembering that scene.
They shoot him, and then she grabs him, and he dive out the window.
her impetus for diving at him is that despite the fact that he's been shot and hacked in the neck, but sorry, I can't remember the specifics. Because I believe he gets shot, then he gets hacked in the neck with the axe. As he's teetering on the brink, he is still armed, and he points his gun at Andy, and that's why she dives in front of him to stop him from shooting her.
It's a bit much.
I'm not saying it's not a bit much.
Okay.
I'm saying at least...
There's a lot of ways they could have done that scene to make it more effective. She could have just taken the bullet for Andy.
I completely agree with that.
They didn't have to do we did this in the book, so we should do it in the movie too. It'll look really, really cool. It's like... It was like, well, we want to kill the villain. Okay, well, shooting him's not enough. Hacking him's not enough. What if we throw him out a fucking window? Seems a little cold-blooded. What if she goes with him? That's the ticket.
Yeah, you see, John McClane has to follow with Hans Gruber out of the Nakatomi Plaza. That'll change.
Yes.
That'll put butts in the seats.
Right, and then as we see her gross, contorted, destroyed body recontort itself, and reassemble, and it'll be fine. People will love it. Okay, sure. So that's that is a major leg of this movie that isn't working, that makes the whole thing tumble over. My other big problem with this, again, is I've now seen Charlize Theron kick ass in like a dozen movies. And in this one, she's not even doing a lot of hand-to-hand combat, which is what made Atomic Blonde so fun. She's just shooting people. Well,
Atomic Blonde had the same kind of... I think it had the same fight choreographer from the first John Wick movie. So there's a lot of deliberate attempts to interplay close quarters firearms with hand-to-hand combat, which can make for a very great viewing experience. Again, the first John Wick, wonderful movie when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
Atomic Blonde, really good at when it comes to that. That has some superbly choreographed, shot and executed fight sequences. Here,
she's just a merc. She's merkin and she's shooting. And here's my other problem with this. You can tell a story of a world-weary soldier who's questioning, is it enough to keep going on and keep fighting the good fight? You can't do this poor of a job of it. Because now, other than I like Charlize Theron, and she has a lot of she carries with her a lot of cachet, so there's a lot of buy-in, regardless of what you see on screen in front of you, before anything even gets started. Charlize Theron has an audience, and I'm in that audience. However, when the first words out of your mouth are, I'm so fucking tired, and the rest of the movie isn't much better than that, she has some degree of motivation. She wants to protect other immortals. She understands that for her own self-preservation, we got to keep the immortals kind of fenced in and on the same page, or the shit like what happened to them in this movie is going to happen. So I get that much, but did you get the sense that Charlize Theron's character, they wrote her just way too cool for school? I needed more emotion out of her. I can handle world weary, but once the plot gets going, she doesn't act with any sense of urgency. And that sense of urgency takes the tension out of every scene she's in, and without any tension, I'm just watching a recitation of scenes happening. There's no hook to keep me involved. Things just happen because they happen.
I can see the argument. I mean, I don't think her character... How do I say this? This is not a knock on the performance. This is a knock on the writing. Let me be clear first. The closest her character gets to interesting is after she discovers, oh, I can die now.
Right.
And unfortunately...
It's in the third act.
Well, not only is it in the third act, it's badly done. The longtime immortal suddenly wrestling with their own potential mortality has been done so much better. And for those of you potentially asking for a example, an easy one that I'm pretty sure most of you will have seen, would be the Wolverine.
Yeah.
And to be fair, even that movie, Wolverine gets a little mopey in the middle of that film.
Well, he starts off a little mopey.
Yeah, and again, he starts off still not processing grief right, and then in the middle gets kind of mopey about, boy, I could die, and then all the actual interesting character work that they've done there is summarily tossed out the window for great big action scene at the end.
Yes, the punchy parts.
Not to overly knock the Wolverine,
no,
but here it's handled.
That train sequence is badass.
Sure, I agree with that. Here, there's just so much. They don't actually give her anything to do to really process it.
Right.
This movie does the most bizarrely backwards job of being boringly slow about things that need a sense of urgency.
Yeah. That's what I mean by, like, it just felt... Chris and I talked about, this idea that Greg Rucka wrote this thing without really thinking it through. Like it felt like he had some thoughts, and he wanted to yell those thoughts at people, and that's how the book reads. The movie kind of reads that way, too. Where he's not taking time to really process or deal with things or give the characters real moments. It's more of, wouldn't it be cool if? And isn't it cool if? And it's like, as comic book readers, we complain a lot about the 90s. The 90s was full of, pockets and giant guns and huge muscles, and everybody was angsty and dark. There's a phrase that's coined grimdark. Yep. And comics just went into this fucking hole in the 90s, and it never quite recovered from that. And movies were right there with it. There was an entire period of the 90s film craft which everything was gritty and grimdark and shitty, and it was like it was like that was the tenor he's hitting with this, except that the theme of your movie should be hope. You're starting with characters who have lost their faith. They've lost their way. They don't see a reason to go on, and yet their Faustian curse is that they must go on. That is the nature of their being. And so at some point you must introduce hope in order for them to be any tension in the movie. And instead it's like, hope is for fags, let's just shoot shit. All right? I suppose if you're trying to harken back to the 90s and you're looking for that old, that old magic of pockets and guns and muscles and darkness and shadow, sure. But so as a throwback to a 90s action flick, it's still boring, but at least I get what you're going for. As an attempt to give us a movie with some substance, missed the mark entirely.
Yeah. I do want to be positive about a couple of things here. So
Charlize Theron's awfully pretty.
If you're only her character is badly written. I think she makes the most of what's given to her.
Well, you said be positive, so I was giving you something positive. I was leading off with positivity. All the actors, I think, do the best job with the material they're given. I'll come to defense of Kiki Lane. I'm sure she's a talented actress. This was not a great project for her.
Yeah. It's not a great project for anyone. So, for starters, the performances, such as they are perfectly acceptable. They're just working with really substandard material.
Yeah.
The fight scenes, I know some people have been very, very positive about them. I'm not going to be overly negative, but most of them are at least readable. Unfortunately, they don't ever they don't ever seem to have any real stakes to them for the most part.
Yeah, Chris brought that up. If nobody can die, where's the tension in the fight scenes?
And a genuinely immortal character is a tough thing to pull off if we're talking about just, the craft of writing, film, whatever have you. I don't care about your medium. If part of your central character's tenet, or any of them, in this case several of them, is, well, they can't die. I'm not saying there's not, as you're fond of saying, there is grist for the mill there, but you need to do some pretty serious workarounds when it comes to how you build tension in action sequences. It's one of my giant gripes about the Hulk as a character. There's no tension. Because,
Hulk is violence porn.
Because I will get angrier, and then you will find some way to beat me, and then, you just made me angrier. You activated my trap card. I am now angrier Hulk. And again, it's really, really, it's really tiring. Again, it is a giant gripe I have with the Hulk. Depending on how Wolverine is written, it's a giant gripe I have with him. Because, okay, he's got a healing factor, but if he can regenerate from being disintegrated, I no longer care about what you do to him for the most part, so there's no tension.
And this is the problem we have with Deadpool, which, other than playing it for laughs.
One of my many problems with Deadpool.
Yeah, unless you're playing it for laughs, which they do in the movies, when you can, when all you have left is a finger and you can regenerate an entire body from that, you must tell a different story. The story of hero in peril from physical danger holds no weight.
Yeah. And so consequently, some of the action scenes in this, they don't really have any stakes to them. The final one, wherein we know Andy is now mortal, that one actually does have a few. And unfortunately, they're not... I don't know who to blame for this. The best fight scenes, the best action scenes, whether it's hand-to-hand combat, sword fighting, laser sword fighting, whatever, they tell a story. They are a narrative device in the sense that they are used to enhance the story. They don't exist just to exist. I'm looking squarely in the generalized vicinity of the explosion that I imagine constantly exists in the back of Michael Bay.
Well, I was going to say, here's two different examples. Everyone loves the Phantom Menace lightsaber scene, which is very acrobatic, and and it's sort of the modern wrestling take on a 4-star classic. Everyone's doing a lot of flippity doos, and everyone's super athletic. There's not much of a story being told, as opposed to
Hang on, can I cut you off for just a second there?
Mm-hmm.
I disagree if we're talking about the Phantom Menace.
Okay.
The lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin in Revenge of the Sith is to use wrestling parlance, it's a terrible spot fest.
Fine. Let's, for the sake of argument, because as I was saying, the one with the Phantom Menace, the stuff with the closing doors, and you see the different. Okay, so
even the fight scene before that, it actually does tell a pretty interesting story about these two, about how Darth Maul is able to overcome not only a 2-on-1 handicap, but the way Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan don't quite sync up the way they have in previous fights.
So to make the point. Yeah, the Revenge of the Sith lightsaber fight scene between Obi-Wan and Anakin goes on.
It's the Young Bucks.
Yeah,
it's just a Young Bucks match.
So for the people like my dad listening, it's just the ongoing athletic, acrobatic series of moves that
it's a floor routine.
Yeah, that's exactly. It tells no story. Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader in A New Hope is like 2 minutes long, and there's no gymnastics involved, but you get everything you need out of that fight.
I would add to that the lightsaber fight between Darth Vader and Luke from Empire Strikes Back,
or Return of the Jedi, for that matter.
Yeah,
Actually, Return of the Jedi is like the best example.
I would genuinely argue it's more. It would be Empire because. Look, my personal take: Return of the Jedi gets way too dialogue heavy. It's almost like they can't trust the audience to follow the story being told through action.
Sure, but without debating the merits of these two, in both cases, it isn't the fighting that you're supposed to be keying into. The fighting is there. It's the reason the characters exist in the scene. But the story being told, in one is Darth Vader is trying to seduce Luke to the dark side, and in the second one, the Emperor is trying to seduce Luke to the dark side by sacrificing Vader, and Luke is fighting off his baser impulses to just become overwhelmed with fear and anger, and just and become his father by destroying his father. We were talking about how this relates to this movie.
Yeah, the only action scene in this movie with narrative tension, again, once Andy is mortal, still doesn't actually work all that well because they choreograph it, they shoot it, they act on it in such a way that it never tells a story related to that. There's one scene of them all going, "Oh crap, she's mortal, so you're in the middle."
So this movie was directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. That's an actual name, Bythewood. Bythe Wood.
I completely believe you. I am aware of someone whose last name is By the Way.
Amazing. She's known for directing Love and Basketball, The Secret Life of Bees, and Beyond the Lights. And the reason I bring this up is she's getting a lot of ballyhoo because this is the first time an African American woman. She appears to be African American. I hope I got that right.
We're going to throw any more qualifiers onto this?
Well, that's the thing.
This is the first comic book superhero movie directed by an African American woman.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Look, you throw enough qualifiers on anything and you're the first to do it.
The point is, this is supposed to be a huge deal because, this woman who normally wouldn't get this kind of project got to do a comic book movie. And what becomes very apparent in watching this is she doesn't understand comic book movies. She thinks she does. The people around her, including Greg Rucka, who works in comic books, gave her the idea of what she thought was supposed to be a comic book movie. She's probably watched a bunch of Marvel movies and a bunch of DC movies and thought, "Oh, I get this. Fight, punchy part, heroes, saving people, lobster. Okay? Shh, roll film." And it's like, nope. You clearly didn't understand, at least with the Marvel movies, you clearly didn't understand what you were watching in many of those cases. And whoever was in your ear telling you what you think you need to do to make a comic book movie did not give you good instruction. Or you didn't listen when they were giving you good instruction. Either way, her interpretation of what the comic book medium is the punchy parts with no narrative tension.
Yeah, and again, it is very unclear to me how much of that is direction and how much of that is writing. But when it comes to this genre, this movie would not fill me with confidence about her ability to exist in this space. Look, my general antipathy for Thor Ragnarok aside, when they said, "Hey, Taika Waititi will do the Guardians movie," I wanted to flip a table because Taika Waititi's understanding of Marvel films is not what you need at all.
No, Taika Waititi's approach to Marvel films is jangling keys. And I like Thor Ragnarok, but that movie is all kinds of blind them with color and don't worry about the story you're telling.
And hey, there's potentially tension or emotion here. How about a fart joke?
Yep. Listen, we don't want people getting too emotional. This is supposed to be a kids comic book movie. Let's not have gravitas here. Let's not have anything serious.
Yeah. So again, point being, I thought that was a terrible fit. I'm not sure that this woman, again, really gets now. Maybe lesson learned, bumps in the road, and her next effort is great. I'm not saying that's not possible.
I have a hard time believing that she didn't get a pat on the back on this one and told, "Good job, Bunky." Because,
of course she did.
And we'll talk about this with the money, but I'm almost certain everyone.
No one is gonna have the strength of character and the integrity to, in this circumstance, say, we'll call this a learning experience.
Right.
No one's gonna do it. They're all gonna drink the proverbial Kool-Aid. They're gonna.
Well, look, Greg Rucka wants more work. Look, isn't really the goal of every comic book writer to become to write movies? That certainly seems to be the way things go. I'm being very facetious, but look, you're right. No one's going to have the strength of character to tell her you really didn't understand what you were doing here. They're going to be like, "Black woman," and that's as far as the praise goes.
Yeah.
You are absolutely a black woman who made a major motion picture that was mostly in focus. Fantastic.
The soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yep. And it's going to go for the same thing for Kiki Lane.
Yeah.
No one's going to... Us two cisgendered white heterosexual males who are middle-aged are going to be brave and go into the world of the internet and say Kiki Lane maybe was miscast.
Well... I'm not, again, in the case, specifically in that case, I'm going to throw all of that on the writing because I don't think anyone could have saved that.
Fair enough.
The way it was written.
I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks there's a sassy young black actress out there who probably could have turned shit writing into a fun and engaging performance.
I will acknowledge that possibility.
In terms of pure statistics, there are X amount of sassy black women currently acting that could have been cast for this part. One of them had to have been, by sheer numbers, Robert, one of them had to have been able to make lemonade out of lemons. Okay, that's just math.
Fair enough. I will happily acknowledge that possibility.
All right. Anything else before we move on to the money?
Yeah, again, because we are talking a little bit about the action scenes here. They are fairly well choreographed. I have a pretty singular gripe about them. And this happens, let me be clear, I'm not saying that this movie is the first movie to do this, okay? But anytime there is a revelation in presentation of something, if we're talking about film, be that the deep focus that is present in stuff like Citizen Kane and completely knocks filmmakers on their butts like, oh, wow, we can do this. Whenever you get something like that, everybody and their dog starts doing it when it's even loosely applicable. And eventually someone figures out a way to do it better, so on and so forth, right? There's always something that instigates, that changes things, and unfortunately when it comes to the fight choreography game, we are still living in a post-John Wick world. While this movie's fight choreography and the fight scenes are competent, well executed, they lack narrative, as we previously discussed, and they just feel horribly derivative.
Yeah.
Not only are they, I say they're readable, and they are, they cut a lot, which I find to be a personal annoyance. And everything about this feels like someone watched Atomic Blonde, watched John Wick, watched part of Taken, and went, oh, I can do something loosely approximating this, please let me. There's nothing interesting, there's nothing novel, and don't get me wrong, novel when it comes to the fight choreography game is hard to do. I'm not saying you can only skin a cat so many ways, right? So the fact that this wasn't wildly revelatory, I'm not going to hold against it, but it's very derivative. And I am going to hold that against it. Last thing. Mark, you and I, a couple of years ago, because you made me, for Damn You Hollywood, reviewed a live-action movie by the name of Pan.
Oh my god, you're referencing Pan? But for why?
Allow me to further explain. One of our major gripes about Pan, and I think this was correct, it felt like the majority of the writing in that movie, whenever someone in the writer's room correctly pointed out, hey, problem, hey, this is getting shortchanged, hey, we don't actually address this, was told, A, shut up, B, we'll fix it in the sequel.
Yeah. I really hated the stinger at the end. I really hated anything having to do with that character because it took away from the central narrative of the movie, which was already overlong.
And this movie has a lot of that symptom going on. Why are we talking about this character? Well, we're setting up for the sequel. Why are we talking about this? Why is this scene taking this long? What's with this plot hole? What's with that plot hole? And I feel like...
Instead of investing in a character that you're not going to really deal with until the second movie if you get one, I feel like we should have gotten more about Booker. Like, in both the book and the movie, Booker is not really fleshed out at all. He's a narrative device.
Yeah. Or maybe we learn a little bit about Chetwili Ejiofor's character apart from Dead Wife.
Or, and this is just a novel thought, maybe instead of just yelling at Niall that your family will hate you forever, maybe have her get away from Charlize Theron for a while, have her go home, and let's just see it happen.
Yeah, and this, I think, is one of the reasons, if you want to have someone who wrote, if you want to have input from the original author into an adaptation of their work, if they want to be a part of it, and if you guys want them to be a part of it, and everybody can kind of come to a proper collaborative creative space, it can be incredibly beneficial. When you have a comic writer, and I don't mean this pejoratively, there are tropes, and I don't mean that negatively either. There are realities and tropes that go with the medium in which you write. And if you're writing comic books with the idea of being serialized, even if you want a limited run, and say you don't want, I don't want to, do the Avengers forever. I don't want to create the next Superman that exists for 80 billion years. If you just want, I've got, how about 40 issues? I've got a good 40-issue limited story. You have to do what that was done here. You have to keep the audience coming back for the next issue. And in that medium, that's expected. It can be a good thing when done right. In the medium of film, if your 2-hour movie is not essentially self-contained, without there being an incredibly good reason for it, I'm happy to give, Fellowship of the Ring a pass. Okay, they didn't get to Mordor. We already know there's 2 more movies. All right, again, I'll give you a pass on that. But Back to the Future is a self-contained story. Even Back to the Future 2 is essentially a self-contained story. 3, you can get the entire gist of Back to the Future 3 and follow everything without ever seeing the other 2, which is one of the reasons which is a brilliant thing.
It's also better than the sequel.
We've had that discussion, and I don't disagree with you.
I just wanted to say it for Jesse's sake.
Okay. Jesse doesn't even listen to this show.
Yes, he does, eventually.
No, he doesn't. Point being, if you go into a movie and your thought is, I'm going to write this as though I get 3 sequels, you're going to write badly. And I think that fundamental conception of this movie that, well, we have to set up for the sequel, is a profoundly bad one. And I think it negatively impacted everything. And again, I don't know to the extent to which that was just Rucka and his writing baggage. I don't know if everyone thought this was a good idea. It wasn't a good idea. So, and I think that is, from a craft standpoint, the last thing I really have here. I really think the writing of this was hampered tremendously by the thought process. I'll get a sequel, so I have to A, seed that in very obvious ways, and B, it provides an easy excuse for me to not write better to begin with.
All right, and on that note, let's talk about the money, such as it is.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
All right, this turkey was made on a budget of $70 million, and it was financed and bought and paid for by Netflix and Skydance Films. Now, it's hard to say whether or not this thing... We don't get metrics on downloads or views or whatever. Time spent on the app.
I know... Here's the only thing I know about this.
Mm-hmm.
Netflix, to the best of my knowledge, is honest when they give you that, top 10 viewed properties on their website. And this sat at number 1, I think, for its release. And
okay.
I don't know. Again, I don't know how much of that is driven by them going, we really want people to see this.
Mm-hmm.
How about we just lie about it?
Well, it's had a fairly decent marketing push. The whole thing with Netflix is it has to provide exclusive content so people will sign up for the service. Then after that, it has to keep you on the service for extended periods of time, which is why, say, Warrior Nun gets made into a show and not a movie. There's nothing,
Wait. So, I'm sorry, just wind that back half a second.
Yes, sir.
What?
Warrior Nun.
I think I just got a little crazy in my ear. Well...
Go ahead. I'm going to continue my explanation. Just
I
Google
could say,
Warrior Nun the comic.
I will not. I will take your word for it that it exists. You roped some poor schmuck into talking about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I got Chris Sheehan on the book, and I got Jason Teasley. Listen, I had to do the Velocipaster. There's no rope in.
That's right. I listened to your review of that. It was funny.
So yes,
that's your paying the piper there, huh?
Yeah, that was me serving penance for all the times I dragged you kicking and screaming into something you did not want to review. So anyway, so there's not... Now, I was going to say there's not a lot here you could have developed into a television show, but that didn't seem to...
I actually think that's a load of crap. I think this might actually work better.
I'm correcting myself. I almost said out loud, and I was like, no, that's not right. And then, as an example of that, they took a very thin graphic novel, I'm Not Okay With This, and turned it into an entire series, which looks like it's getting a sequel.
Of course it's getting a sequel, because... gay people?
Teen angst. They're the easiest thing to shoot. In any case, my point being...
you know what? I wish you were wrong about that, because it might mean we got less of them, and they wouldn't have just bastardized Lock and Key the way they did, but...
I'm not going back down that road with you again. That was...
Hey, look, we talked about it. I've said my piece. I'm just using it as an example of...
But there's another example. Netflix has just dipped both hands in to the muck and mire of comic books, and 9 out of 10 times they come up with a series... On the occasion where I think it just peters out, Last Days of American Crime. It was one graphic novel. They turned it into one movie, one and done. The Old Guard, same thing, even though The Old Guard has a second trade paperback out there with another 5-6 issues in it called Force Multiplied. So there is room for a sequel in both book and film format. And again, they could have done a show with this. They chose not to. The point being that the success of a Netflix exclusive property, to wit is the ability to keep somebody and as many people as possible on Netflix for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Which is why you get more exclusive shows, because shows tend to be 10 to 13 hours long versus a 2-hour movie. And we don't quite know how successful this is just yet. We may never know, but, you know...
Well, Netflix, you mentioned that they get to play with house money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they will never see a strict financial return on any movie they make, but they make so much money in guaranteed revenue, it doesn't really matter. They can afford, Netflix, the reality is Netflix can afford bombs much more readily than the average studio can because of the business model they're operating under.
So, where that leaves this movie, it's critically it's gotten, and we'll talk about that when we get to the next part of our show.
I'm gonna have to yell at a bunch of like preening, virtue signaling dickheads, aren't I?
Yeah, more than likely. He's a dickhead. So we'll get to that moment.
I find it to be an accurate descriptor of some of those people. Hang on, I have to tell you this actually, because you and I was watching The Simpsons over the 4th of July, right?
Okay.
At a barbecue, at a grill with my family. I was inside hanging out with my aunt's poor Chihuahua.
Jesus, Robert.
I feel so bad for that dog. It should have had its leg amputated by now, but they won't do it.
So you and a crippled dog spent 4th of July together. Go on.
No. I'm not only there, but I'm in the house with this dog because I don't want it to feel terribly alone. Watching The Simpsons, and I don't know the name of the episode. It's one of the newer ones. The whole thrust of it is Bart convinces a cruise ship line that a plague has been released upon the world and they need to stay at sea and on vacation longer because he thinks everyone's miserable in their normal lives.
Okay.
To do this, he hooks up a crappy direct-to-DVD movie to the ship's broadcast system and plays part of it, cuts part of it off, and then destroys the radio. Because, of course, 10-year-old Bart can do all this, but go with me. As everyone is actually buying this, right, it comes on, and the audience buys it. He holds up the DVD cover and goes, chillingly realistic indeed, Joel Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal, and I just about fell off the couch.
It brings me great joy to know that this podcast caused you to have that reaction.
I almost fell off the couch. And bear in mind, that gag actually gets better when it's revealed that right after the scene cuts out, he stops broadcasting it, but they watch the movie later.
Mm-hmm.
The very next scene is someone walking up and going, Admiral, it's worse than we thought. The virus is bigger now, and a like 10-foot virus tears into the room. But yeah, old man Morgenstern would think that's chillingly realistic.
Nice. All right, so I don't have much more to add to the money part of the old guard, but I do want to talk about where we are for the year. Theater shut down in March, as we know. So the news to talk about is twofold. One, what's happened?
Steven Spielberg is still making a killing.
What's happened since with the movies that have been released through VOD or some other format, and what's going to happen in the very, very, very near future. First, real quick, no major movements in the top 10. They were what they were the last time we did this, so I'm not even going to bother. But according to the worldwide gross for 2020, we have The Rhythms... No, just kidding. Trolls World Tour, which was released VOD, much to the chagrin of the movie change, and a little civil war broke out, has made 5,121,198. It was beat by My Spy, which was delayed 2 and 3 times, and finally purchased by Amazon for their VOD Prime service. My Spy is the family comedy with Dave Bautista. I know
what it is.
We have an audience that might not know what it was.
Look, the only reason I know what it is because you were going to make me review it.
I was never going to make you review My Spy. Why do you tell lies about
that?
Me?
No, bull. That was totally on the schedule.
So My Spy eked out $5,000 more than Trolls World Tour did. The High Note,
Holy.
which was released VOD, has not cracked 1 million yet. And The King of Staten Island, which was another one Universal put out in the hopes that it would do well on VOD, hasn't even cracked 300,000. Scoob, which we reviewed for this network, hasn't cracked 200,000 just yet. So let me ask you a question. This dabbling in VOD, is it that the movies themselves, which may have done better in theatrical releases, but even with the COVID pandemic and the quarantine and the availability of VOD services, you just think the films weren't good enough to earn much more money, or do you think that this whole experiment has been an abysmal failure?
I think it's more. Again, there's a lot of things at play here. I think it is more that these were just never. I mean, come on. Which of those was going to be a big hit in theaters?
Well, Scoob might have been. I mean, it was a summer release, and it was for children.
It would not. Scoob would not have been a big hit. It might have done okay. Honestly, of the ones listed, I think Trolls World Tour was probably the only one that had a chance at being a legitimate.
Yeah, that was right at the heart of the quarantine. Like, it had just started. So people were at home, and watching VOD was kind of an in thing to do at the time. By the time May rolls around, people are like, "I'm fucking over this."
Well, again, not only are we generally over it, we are not discussing top tier, cream of the crop film releases, right? Again, no, My Spy got delayed 1 billion times before there was a pandemic because nobody cared.
Yeah. So with that said, the one thing I did want to talk about is what happens now, because clearly, unless you have like a Black Widow or a Mulan or a Wonder Woman, you're not going to do as well on VOD as you are going to do. We're just not there as a society. People are not wanting to spend the money. Maybe in a few more years, people are working, the economy stabilizes, et cetera, you might have a situation where people are more willing to do VOD. But for all the big talk that we had back in March when we looked at Bloodshot, my prediction that this would be the end of theaters did not pan out. People want to go to the theater to go see stuff.
This needs to be said if we're talking about this from a cultural standpoint. The theater experience is just that. It is part of the culture. It's not that. Look, I watch plenty of crap on my computer. I stream a lot of stuff. I still go to the theater sometimes.
We had a conversation. Jesse took his kids to go see Back to the Future. You saw Jaws, and I took my daughter to go see The Avengers. Because the theater experience for these movies cannot be duplicated.
I saw Jaws. I saw the first and third Indiana Jones movies in theaters. I'm seriously contemplating going to see Ghostbusters, which is in theaters around me. Interstellar around me is back in theaters, and believe me, I am so tempted to see that again. That movie loses. Not only do I love that movie, it loses so much in translation from big to small screen. It's not even funny.
So, we love our theaters and we don't want them to go away, but we are dealing with a very fluid. This is not going to be a dissertation on pandemic versus pandemic. This is not going to be any kind of an editorial on how this is being handled in any way, shape, or form. This is a recitation of facts. It's a fluid situation. 1 minute, you have a state that says, we're opening all the things. The next minute, another state saying, we're closing all the things. Hide in your basement. It is hard to make heads or tails of things right now. We don't know if schools are being opened. A whole bunch of districts in Florida, just as an example, delayed school from anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. In some cases, they've, like the state of California has said the LA Unified School District basically was like online learning until we tell you otherwise. So, meanwhile, in North Dakota, Great White played a concert and there were no masks and no social distancing, and there was apparently no need to worry about a pandemic. So, with that said, where does that leave theaters? Well, in most situations, like, for example, California just closed all their theaters. Here's another big one, and this is really a canary in the coal mine. The Because, and let me put this out there and say it as plain as I possibly can and as quickly as I can. If you don't have the opportunity to sell your movie worldwide, they're not going to open that movie. Plain and simple. These big-ticket movies were produced with the Chinese audience in mind, whether that was Black Widow, Wonder Woman, Mulan, etc. There's no fucking way they open without Chinese markets.
Not only the Chinese markets, if we got some degree of universality opening in the United States, and I'm not advocating for that. Again, this is not that is not the point of this discussion. But I think there's certain movies that they would bite the worldwide bullet if the 330 million people in the United States all had the availability of going to see it.
Sure, I think they'd bite it on like Black Widow, for example. I think Disney would be like, just to keep the schedule, we'll just open Black Widow in the United. But you can't. First of all, you don't even have Los Angeles right now.
I'm aware of that. Like right now, no, nothing. I don't think anything with a budget of over $100 million is going to get released in.
Which brings us to Tenet, who I'm reading.
I am so depressed.
Oh, two things about Tenet. I most recently read that if this thing doesn't make $800 to $1 billion, they will not break even on this movie, which is insane to me. But according to
at this point, that calculation probably includes all the delays they've had to deal with.
Okay, fair enough. July 13th, there's a Variety article that says Tenet likely to be delayed again because of coronavirus surge, analyst predicts. You know when Tenet's scheduled to come out? Fucking August 12th. Okay? The Empty Man is supposed to come out before that. What's The Empty Man? It doesn't matter. It's a feature film that was based on a comic book, and it was scheduled to come out August 7th. It's currently still scheduled. Let's see if it actually happens.
Guess who's going to be on the source material for that?
Our friend, Robert Winfree. So we've got...
Guess what Mark owes me for being on the source material for that?
Lots of anime. So
and on that note, actually...
Yes, sir?
Nah, it'll wait. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I gotta get through this. So we have The Empty Man on August 7th, currently scheduled. Allegedly, we still have Tenet on August 12th, and then Mulan on August 21st, Bill and Ted's and New Mutants on the 28th, and then it just keeps going. A Quiet Place. You know, another movie just dropped off. I actually updated the calendar today. I didn't make a big deal about it because who cares at this point? But Monster Hunter got delayed till next year. So right now,
can it be delayed until the end of time?
So right now, A Quiet Place 2 is scheduled all by its lonesome on September 4th, at least as far as what we're reviewing.
Yeah, that ain't going to happen.
I don't have anything on the 11th as of right now, but as of the 18th, there's still The Kingsman. As of the 25th, nothing, and then Wonder 2 is still locked onto its October 2nd date. Now, this is all fluid. As soon as you listen to this podcast and you delete it and you go, well, that was a fine, how do you do? You could find that all of these movies have been delayed till next year. There's talk they're going to wipe the calendar clean for 2020. I've heard that rumor. That like movie theaters just won't come back. Now, if that happens, there's a good chance that some of your local theater chains will also not. You know, like some theater chains are open here in Tampa, for example. Many of them have chosen to just not open. So, for example, a small little indie theater a couple miles from my house, this is where I took my daughter to go see The Avengers, that's still going. Obviously, there's theaters in Robert's neck of the wood, there's theaters in Jesse's neck of the wood, but a lot of the big theater chains have said, no new movies, no movie theaters at all. And you can't be out of business that long before you're out of business. So, that's where we are with movies and the money as of today, July 14th.
Yep.
All right. And now, here's Robert. Here's Robert yelling at dickheads.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
So this has an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score is 74%. And I would imagine a lot of that 26% that did not like the film and brought it down was them just yelling feminism into the ether.
You know, again, I am well aware this is not how aggregates work. If I were to give it a score out of 100, low 70s is probably where I'd go.
Melanie McFarlane of Salon.com, top critic.
No. Why this rag? Why Salon? I hate that place. I hate that publication.
In drawing our attention to who these characters are,
They don't.
as opposed to leaning upon the awe-inspiring moves they can pull off,
They don't.
the movie opts to be rich with emotional resonance as opposed to lousy with quips and explosions. Oh, you don't like Marvel films, madam.
Yeah. There's a world of difference between... Oh, God. There's a world of difference between the ability to use action sequences properly to help tell a story and what we've got here. You're just complaining to complain about that. Like, I'm sorry, no.
Steven Silver of Goomba Stomp.
Wow.
Goomba Stomp, Robert Winfree. Are you ready to do the Goomba Stomp?
You know that's a reference to Mario, right?
Yes, I have a son who's obsessed with this sort of thing. Takes the comic book adaptation form in a new and exciting direction.
Nope.
And in this strange summer with no superhero movies, it's especially refreshing.
Okay. No. What part of... I'm pretty sure we laid out the case for not only how derivative this is, but we provided a ton of evidence. Your response to us saying it's derivative is, but it's not Marvel. Sorry. Other movies exist. The fact that you just want to complain about those doesn't mean this isn't derivative.
Renee,
It's not fresh. It's not new. Stop it.
Renee Schoenfeld, Common Sense Media.
Lacking both common and sense.
Smart female-led action saga has heart, violence, language. Did you have like a word count that you had to like meet minimally?
I
What the fuck?
imagine, because, no. Okay, first of all, where are you people getting that this has boatloads of heart? I'm genuinely confused by this unless somewhat boring sequences of Charlize Theron looking soulfully and regretfully off in the distance as other people dump exposition behind a wall that she can overhear. And no, you know what this is? I know where people are getting hard from this. He's not my boyfriend. This is the he's not my boyfriend speech. Everyone stopped watching after that and said, heart.
Yep. And then went to go write their reviews.
Yeah. That's what this... God, that is exactly what this feels like.
Speaking of gay characters, Fatima Sharif of One Room with a View.
How many rooms?
One.
And what does it have?
Prince Bythewood actualizes a nuanced hero's journey led
Not
by
really.
women and gay characters that refuse to be buried. Madam, your virtue is showing. The otherwise cold atmosphere is warmed by its soundtrack and combined passion.
Oh, shut up. I will accept a wide variety of opinions, and I will accept how many of you were led astray about the quality of this film because it espouses certain viewpoints that you agree with. I will hear nothing positive about the dreck that is blasted over this movie like a CW teen drama from the early 2000s. Shame on you 1,000 times over.
Sean Edwards, Fox for Kansas City. Theron is the reason to watch The Old Guard. She might be the greatest female action star ever.
I'm struggling to come up with a counterpoint.
Except that it's kind of... Blue is pretty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, as far as reviews go, is that person just dying to be positive? Sure. Like, okay, I have to be positive about this. So Charlize Theron is in it, and she's a good actress and might be the best female action star ever. And I now, because you've said that, I now have to put on my thinking hat, and go, okay, hang on. Is that a reasonable claim? And ultimately come to the conclusion that I can't find at least two strong opposing candidates, so sure, it's a fair claim, in absence of more nuanced discussion and more research on my part.
Monica Castillo of Polygon.
Oh.
Polygon.
Can you just be gone?
Prince Bythewood and Ruka inject much-needed energy into the action genre with the movie's diverse cast, its voluminous story, and its clear-cut fight scenes.
Okay.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. I've said this before, and I will say this now, lest I be accused of something. I probably will be anyway, but to anyone paying attention to these things, hear me out. I don't have a problem with diversity. I don't think diversity for its own sake has any more inherent value than homogeneity for its own sake. They have a diverse cast. It doesn't actually matter. Like, who cares?
Yeah, really, would it have mattered if the character, if the character playing Niall was Chinese, or Mexican, or Filipino? Would it have mattered to... The only way that it matters with any of the other characters is if you're telling me that Charlize Theron character was born in the Middle East, she probably should look a little bit more Middle Eastern.
Yeah, like, I completely agree there. So, point being, anyone who says the cast is diverse, you're just saying shibboleth. That's all you're doing. The action scene, hang on, the action scenes being readable. That's actually, again, that's iffy. I was able to follow it, but boy, were these went to the school of 1,000 cuts.
But that's the thing, like, you shouldn't give praise to the standard
Base
that you're
competence.
Yeah, base competence. I'm hiring you to direct an action movie. Do you want the action sequences to be seen? That's like when my friend asked for his food to be packed away at a restaurant, and the waiter looked at him confused and said, "Here's the box. Do you want me to pick up your food with my hands?" No.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't want unreadable action scenes. That should be a given.
It really should. And, okay, I'm sorry. Voluminous story? No.
Oh, I got one for you.
Oh, no.
This is from Clarine. Hello, Clarice. Pablo O. Schloss. Oh, good old Schloss. Not Schloss. Pablo O. Scholes. Good old Scholes. There are good performances for an action film. Hurt?
Who decided that should be the clip of this review?
You know what's funny is that they stuck an the ... That's ampersand? Ellipsis. They stuck an ellipsis in there between for and an, as if there was something more to the sentence that they were like, it doesn't really add to anything, so we'll just skip it. Like, this is what they thought was the best example of his particular review. Full review in Spanish, by the way. Sean Collier of Box Office Profits. Fortunately, director, Prince that she is, God bless her, good to her mother, Gina Prince Bythewood, leaves plenty of time for character development, much of which is tender and thoughtful. God, if people actually saw this movie, there would be an insistence that Gina Bythewood be carried through the streets on people's shoulders. White people's shoulders, for sure.
Yeah, that is an asinine take on this.
Not since Patty Jenkins directed a competent Wonder Woman movie have people like been jerking off of themselves over the fact that a woman got to do comic books. Like, really? Is this where we are?
Yes, which is sad and pathetic. Sorry, last thing there. if you're... I don't know why you think that character development has to be done with exposition dumps. That's actually the worst way to do it. But if that's all we're praising, I'm sorry, there's... I think we mentioned a little bit ago, since we're talking about Charlize Theron, the character growth and development in Mad Max Fury Road is done without giant exposition dumps and is a lot better. But that was written by a much better writer.
All right. Finishing up here. Matt Conway of Battle Royale with Cheese.
Gotta have the cheese.
Gotta have the cheese. Infusing its familiar superhero framework with a well-calibrated balance of thrills and humanity, The Old Guard excels as a promising first chapter in a new franchise.
Not really. I'm sorry, are we just... Look, maybe this is me, okay? Maybe I'm the old man yelling at the kids to get off my lawn here. All right? I will own that if true. Have we really gotten to a point with film review and the state of movies in general that we're willing to overlook horrible flaws on the basis of, well, it's the first part of a franchise? This is not chapter 1 of a book, right? This is a movie. It is a self-contained story.
I don't understand those words you're using. What do you mean by self-contained?
This is not... Again, I'm willing to forgive the first chapter of a novel. I'm willing to forgive the first issue of a comic, if we're going to keep with that metaphor.
And as you said before, when you know that the story is being told in 3 parts, it's okay that you conclude your first part of The Lord of the Rings as you do. Because you know, there are some stories that can be told compartmentalized. That should not be the standard for filmmaking.
Yeah, I don't understand why everyone and their dog now is like, well, this sucks, but it's only part 1, and I don't think it's fair to judge it until we have the whole... No. This is
because even if you if that's part of your pitch, if your pitch to a studio is, I'm going to bring you oodles of money by giving you a franchise, you still your first batter has to get on base. You don't necessarily have to hit a home run. It'd be nice if you got a double, but at least get to first base. The problem is these are like hitting, throwing the bat and hitting an old lady who's eating a hot dog. These are foul balling. These, like, you're not even getting to a base yet.
Yeah.
Rendy Jones of Rendy Reviews. There is no way, Robert Winfree, in hell I tell you, that this is director Gina Prince Bythewood's first action film. Now I'm just itching for her to do more.
It is. Very clearly, in fact, her first. And look, if she never does another one of these, I don't think anything of value is lost.
You're going to love this next one. Josh Larson of Larson on Film. If Ridley Scott had made Only Lovers Left Alive, it might have looked something like The Old Guard.
I'm sorry, what?
Susan Granger dug into her hat of words and threw them on the paper. And this is what she came up with, because I don't believe Susan Granger writes reviews anymore.
She has a chimp that she sits at a typewriter.
And the chimp says, edgy and exciting, filled with intense action-packed skirmishes.
No. There's no tension in any of those action scenes. I'm sorry, were you on the edge of your seat when the two immortals decided to punch each other in the face on a plane?
Yeah.
Look, I have the same gripe with, now, to be clear, this scene builds tension the scene I'm going to reference builds tension in other ways. But there's that gag in the first Pirates movie when Sparrow and Barbossa are sword fighting, and they're both immortal.
Oh my God, Jeffrey Rush gives the best line of that entire movie, which is
So
chock
what
full
do-
of great Johnny Deppisms.
Yeah. So what's it to be now, Jack? We to be the two immortals locked in combat until Judgment Day? Like, what are we gonna do here?
Right, and they keep sword fighting for a little bit because clearly there was something to be had by getting an advantage over the other one, if nothing else, but for ego's sake.
Well, and also what makes that work is there's other stuff going on.
Right.
The crew is being attacked by the zombie pirates. You've got the few that are fighting with Will and Elizabeth, and there's the will they, won't they get the... there is a sort of Damocles there, a ticking clock, if you will. They're trying to undo the immortality.
Right.
That's where the tension comes from. But these two characters who are both immortal, both know they're immortal, and are just kind of keeping each other busy. There's no tension of each of them doing damage to each other.
Right. You're not wondering like, oh my God, is Jack going to die? Because they've already taken the air out of that particular balloon. He got stabbed, and then he stepped into the moonlight, and it was like, oh, ooh. And then you see he has the coin.
Yeah. So
Your-
point being, only one of the action scenes in this movie actually potentially has anything approximating stakes. No, I imagine this woman does not actually understand what makes a good cinematic action scene.
Well, you know who does? Johnny Gaze Monica, Fanboys of the Universe.
Oh, not this guy.
Yeah, this fucking bologna sandwich. An efficient mix of action, philosophy, and emotion that makes the idea that immortals live among us seem remarkably plausible.
I'm sorry. You are one of these idiots who is confused and misled by mediocre writing that references something that you can go, oh, I recognize that. Yeah, congratulations. We all took Philosophy 101 and we all learned that Friedrich Nietzsche is a thing.
Okay.
Whoop-de-freaking-do.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So, you and I spent an hour talking about elements of the film craft, the plot, the characterization, the direction, the performance. And did you have any major issues with any of the things that I brought up? And I don't want to rehash the first hour. There's a reason I'm asking this. It's yes or no. Did you feel like between the two of us we got to the points that needed to get to in what is to be considered true film review?
I would say that, yes. Not to be too self-congratulatory, but yeah.
Okay. How would you compare what we did then to the following? Fico Cangiano of Cine Express. Charlize Theron kicks butt. The story is attractive, and the action is entertaining. Sounds like fun. And it is.
I'm glad you got to let your second grader practice making sentences in your profession.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I mean, how unbelievably pedantic can you be?
It's fun. It is fun. It's fun.
That
Fun,
sounds like
fun,
fun.
fun,
It's
fun.
fun.
Fun,
Jingle.
fun.
Jingle keys.
So,
My God, I'm a tomato.
Jeffrey Lyle's Movie Files, agrees with you. Absolutely thinks that people should write cohesive, compartmentalized films and not worry about sequels when he says, shows a ton of potential, which will be fully realized in subsequent installments.
I'm sorry. I you know what? I'm going to say it like this. You bunch of glad-handing jackasses. If the first Iron Man movie were half as bad as this movie is, the entire scope of cinema is different right now. But now, we are all just kind of, pretending that everyone gets 3 movies? No. You have to earn your keep. This movie doesn't. Creatively. Financially, who knows? I'm not going to give this movie, or any movie, a pass because there's sequels in the works. Unless you very deliberately set up, from the outset, that we're telling a trilogy of movies. if your first movie says Part 1 in the title somewhere, I might make certain allowances about broad overarching narratives that, okay, we'll see where this goes. No, not the case here. You took a flyer and you assumed you would get to finish it in the sequel. Like, I'm going to bring up Pan again. It doesn't work out all the time. And it shouldn't work out here.
I've got one more left, and this one really does beg the question, why don't we write these reviews down? Because if these people can get published on Rotten Tomatoes, there's no reason why we can't. I mean,
there's plenty of reason why we can't.
Well, sure, if you want to really be pedantic about it, but Linda and Al Lerner of Movies and Shakers. Movies and Shakers.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, wait till you hear this. This is the kind of review I like to end on. One that's probably going to give you an aneurysm.
Yeah. Easy on the aneurysms for the next month, for the next week or so, yeah? We lost somebody yesterday to an aneurysm, is all.
Okay.
Not we being the generalized public. Grant Imahara from Mythbusters.
Oh, I did not know. Did not mean to offend.
I'm not offended. I mean, but I'm
moving on.
We use that joke a lot.
This is one sci-fi, supernatural, super bloody, battle-heavy film. Charlize Theron delivers her role with a vengeance as a fearless, immortal warrior, like a Mad Max Plus.
Wow. Whoa. Pump the brakes there just a second or two. First of all, you shills. You utter shills. You regurgitated copy from the studio. That's all you did there. Second of all, the worst Mad Max movie, okay? The worst, which is Beyond Thunderdome, is a significantly better and more put-together film than this. If you even want to say it's better than Beyond Thunderdome, and I might go along with it, the other three movies blow this out of the water. It is a horrible comparison to draw. Moreover, the entire narrative around Mad Max is the lone man's search for losing his own humanity and reclaiming it along the way. This shoehorns like all of that into 40 minutes if we're going to be generous about the character development and narrative. And ignores, crucially, the most important part, the alone part. Look, one of the big gripes I have about the writing of this movie is that they just say repeatedly, we're alone except for each other, that's why who we are to each other matters so much. They don't even say that a lot, but they do say it once or twice. It's why Booker's betrayal is supposed to sting so badly, because these people literally have no one else. They do a terrible job of showing it, and it falls apart because of that. Consequently, any real relation to the Mad Max character and his arc is gone because these people do, in fact, have each other. If there's a spin-off where Booker is by himself going crazy and becomes a serial killer for no good reason, and then eventually rediscovers what it means to be a person in the world, then maybe you can draw that comparison. Here, no. It is an inaccurate comparison. Shame on you for making it.
That wraps our show for this evening, folks. We hope you enjoyed. It's always one of our longer shows. I've given up on the idea that these can be anything less than 2 hours. But that's fine. You know, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of segments. It's different from our other shows. So a good time is had. Tomorrow, Jesse Starcher will be on to talk the new Ensferum album, Thalassic, and then myself and Pat Mullen will be doing the next chapter in our boxing history podcast. We'll be looking at the Muhammad Ali comeback story. He's gotten his boxing license back, and he wants his title back, too. Next week, we'll be doing Pride of Baghdad, Extreme Rules, and Fight for the Fallen, Static X, Project Regeneration, Volume 1, and David Wright will debut his new Star Trek retrospective series. We'll be looking at the Kirk movies. That'll be fun. If you enjoyed our show talking about the movie and you want to hear a little bit more about the book, myself and Christiane broke that down for you yesterday. It's in the archives as we speak. Last week, myself and Alexis Hana talked Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. Myself and David Wright talked Harley Quinn, the DC Universe animated show, Season 2. And then myself and Alexis Hana reviewed the first season of Looney Tunes shorts that are exclusive to HBO Max. And finally, myself and Chris Bailey, how do you do, reviewed AEW Fyter Fest, headlined by the one and only Orange Cassidy versus the Painmaker, the Judas, Chris Jericho. All right, you do a podcast.
That sounds terrible.
You do a podcast. You talk about MMA and Venom and Reebok and all kinds of ill shit. So tell them all about it.
Yeah, I got a busy week this week, apparently. Yeah, the latest edition of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, we reviewed UFC 251, which was on Saturday. You can also find my full live coverage, and the full report I wrote up on UFC 251 in the MMA zone of 411 Mania. Yesterday, I pinch hit on live coverage of WWE Raw in the wrestling zone of 411 Mania, so you can find my full report on that show. Seems to have been fairly well received. Blew my mind. I expected to be run out of town on a rail. But you can find that. You can find my latest edition. I provide reviews for the content that Major League Wrestling is putting out right now.
Did you see my comment to you?
I don't think so. I must have missed it. Which one's it in?
The original Raw review, like the ongoing coverage.
I must have missed that. That I forget how crazy that comment section gets.
Okay, I'm going to find it for you because you need to know that I wrote it to you.
Okay. I provide coverage for what MLW does at the moment. At the moment, they're re-airing their old underground television show, so you can find my review of their re-air of episode 1, headlined by Christopher Daniels and Vampiro Wrestling.
Wow.
Yeah. It's from 2003. 2003. Christopher Daniels already had 10 years in the wrestling business in 2003. Not a joke. He actually did. So upcoming, this also relates to the podcast, to the Ground and Pound show where we previewed these two events. Tomorrow, I will be covering UFC on ESPN 13. 13? Let me double check that. Yeah, 13. In the MMA zone of 411 Mania, it's a fight card. That's about all I got. It's not especially good. So I'll be covering that, and that will be Wednesday. Saturday will be UFC. It's listed as on ESPN plus 30. So I don't know if big ESPN has something else they're going to be airing in that time slot. But I'll be covering that. That features the rematch between Davison Figueiredo and Joseph Benavidez for the flyweight title. Because Figueiredo done knocked out Benavidez the first time, but missed weight. And I imagine if something happens screwy in this fight, they will just throw up their hands and can the whole division. So I'll be covering that on Saturday. And I don't remember which of the Star Trek...
Here's what it is. Okay, so this is what I wrote to you to encourage you, because I know you were nervous doing Raw coverage. That's a big leap up for you. So I wanted you to...
Nervous is the wrong word. I'm not nervous about it. I don't care enough to be nervous about what I do.
You had a lot to live up to. It's like their signature fucking thing they do on 411. So I wanted you to know that I was behind you and I was supporting you. So I wrote, "We are building a fighting force of extraordinary magnitude. We forge our spirits in the same tradition as our ancestors. Robert Winfree is a magnificent leader. He has our gratitude. Let's all give Robert Winfree a great big hand."
Are you referencing something with that?
Yes, that's the Kentucky Fried Movie, A Fistful of Yen.
Haven't seen it, actually.
You've never seen the Kentucky Fried Movie? Holy shit, we need to watch that together.
I will not.
Oh, my God. First of all, I need to watch it with you just to hear your live reaction to Catholic high school girls in trouble.
I'm sorry, what is that?
Don't worry about it. We'll talk offline. Finish your plugs.
Is that like the... Is that the title of the porn movie that's the MacGuffin for that everyone's trying to get their hands on?
Okay, so the Kentucky Fried Movie is a series of sketches.
Oh, okay.
And so some of the sketches are trailers for movies brought to you by produced by Samuel L. Bronkowitz.
Fair enough.
And one of the Samuel L. Bronkowitz productions is Catholic High School Girls in Trouble.
Sure.
Hey,
okay,
it made me laugh.
Okay, that's a thing.
Yep, it's definitely a thing.
No, I've never seen that particular movie, so your reference was lost on me, but I appreciate it. And I appreciate you clicking and giving that particular bit of support. Not the... Have I done Raw for them before?
Never.
I've done...
Never before has the... Damn it. Never before has the beauty of the sexual act been so crassly exploited. Brutal, savage, beyond perversion. All right, I'm done now. Thanks. You can move forward.
Okay. Yeah, I've done SmackDown. This might have been the first time I've done Raw. I don't care. Look, I'm glad people enjoyed it. I'm glad I didn't,
Yeah, they didn't give you shit?
Some people, but...
Really? Why would people give you shit? You're like filling in for someone.
Not as much on the live, not as much on the live coverage. I think in the report.
Did people not like your star ratings or something?
I think the one I remember. I mean, there's always a couple of like just generically douchey comments that okay, whatever, it's the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was one that was just like, well, this review started in a very negative place, and between that and Acero's normal snark, the reviewers might need to be reminded that you're supposed to start with a blank canvas.
You should have, as a response, you should have posted a picture of your erect penis. And on that note, finish your plugs. I'm shutting up.
The graphic file would be too big. I mean, look, I'm not saying that I'm not a hypercritical person. I am, but if all you want is a dry recitation of events, go to my MMA coverage where I'm a lot straighter.
Right.
If I'm watching professional wrestling, especially WWE's product in 2020, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to amuse myself because they're not trying to help me out and entertain me at all.
Hey, you don't have to sell it on me. I'm the one that's put "Hooray for Boobies" as the title of my Ronda Rousey coverage.
I forgot you did that.
There's a reason I don't write for that company anymore.
Oh, God. Yeah, so those coming up, and then this Sunday on the 411 Ground and Pound show, double review. Then I think a single preview. I don't know, one of the two. I'll figure it out by then. So if you're interested in MMA, please stop by those. This latest episode of the podcast, myself, Jeff Harris, and friend of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, Andrew Graham, we got together, we talked, we laughed, we made observations, some of them insightful, some of them not so insightful, but what are you going to do? Nobody bats 1,000. I'm not sure which of the upcoming Star Trek episodes I'm supposed to be on, but I know I'm on some of them. I think I said I know I'm going to be on the Voyager one. I think when it comes to the others, I said I've seen all of them somewhat recently enough to speak somewhat cogently. So if you need somebody, there's a few I haven't seen, so there's some I wouldn't be helpful on, but I'm on some of those. So stay tuned for that. Was there anything else I had to plug?
The next time you'll be with us will be... Well, it won't be for Warrior Nun, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you don't pay me enough for that.
August 3rd, we'll be doing a special Monday TV party for Keep Your Hands Off Isoken.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be talking about something that is genuinely wholesome and kind of uplifting, and I'm a little bit shocked by that reality.
And then we'll get a double shot of Robert. I'm going to have him on to talk about The Empty Man, the comic book, and then we'll be back to another day in Hollywood.
There's our normal Drek.
Yep. And then hopefully we'll have Tenet. Then
Have
Mulan.
you read the? Hang on. Have you read The Empty Man yet?
I have not.
Okay.
Have you?
Yes, because I like to prepare.
It's like a million weeks away. I have time.
It's 4.
All right.
4 weeks, like 4 or 5 weeks.
I read it the day of. All right, folks. This has been 2 hours of time. I'm sure you wish you had back, but that's okay. We enjoyed it ourselves.
Hang on. To be fair, I mean that about the movie, which is a little over 2 hours long.
For Robert Winfree, be well. I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.